Hello, I'm Nicky Piszczor, and I'm here speaking with Westminster graduate Charles Mansell, the son of Thomas V. Mansell, who founded the Westminster Mock Convention back in 1936. Charles is an attorney in Newcastle and lives right here in New Wilmington. We're here today to speak about his father's legacy of this long-standing Westminster tradition, as well as his own experience of the Mock Convention. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, thank you.
Now, first of all, I understand your father was a 1929 graduate of Westminster who returned to teach in 1933 after attending Harvard Law School. And a couple of years later, he decided to present the idea of the Mock Convention to one of his government classes. How exactly did he come up with the idea for the Mock Convention?
Well, he went to, as you just mentioned, he went to Harvard Law School. And while he was at Harvard, he roomed with a graduate of Oberlin. Oberlin had already had a mock convention, and they chatted about that. And when Dad got back here and got into the swing of things, if you will, in the government class, it occurred to him it'd be a nice thing and an educational thing to do here. And I think that's the basis for it.
So he learned of this idea from one of his roommates, I believe, then?
Yes.
And they had already had a mock convention at Oberlin?
Oberlin had already done that, and they discussed that in some detail, and Dad brought it home.
Very cool. Why do you think it was so important for your father to start an event like this at Westminster?
Well, Dad was always interested in politics, and he followed that sort of thing. I can remember growing up that in those days it wasn't as professional, but you did have the TV coverage of the conventions, and that was always on the TV as I was growing up. And I think he was interested in that. He thought it would be educational for the students to learn that process. And, of course, the best way you learn is by experience. So he wanted to do that. And he also, I heard him say many times that he also thought it was a lot of fun and the kids should enjoy it. It wasn't just educational. It should also be fun.
So Westminster was the third college in the nation to start a mock convention like this?
I believe that's right. I can't remember the second one now, but there was Washington and Lee.
Washington and Lee, yes.
That's right.
Yes. And the mock convention has changed and grown over the years. How has it changed, and do you think these are changes that your father would appreciate?
Well, everything evolves. So I think Dad would certainly recognize that occurs and would approve of those changes, assuming, of course, they're positive.
Now, you're a graduate of Westminster also, graduated in 1968. And what was your own personal experience of the mock convention?
Well, I was a couple of things. Number one, I was the chairman of the Colorado delegation, which put me a little in a different light in the sense that I did get into some of the meetings that perhaps the delegates did not get into. But remember, in 1968, I was a senior for that mock convention, and all of us knew that we were headed for the service. Everybody was being drafted out of college. So clearly the number one issue for that convention was Vietnam and how we should handle Vietnam.
So, what was the atmosphere like when you were at the mock convention?
Well, the atmosphere, we had a lot of fun, and I'm not apologizing for that. But the atmosphere was probably a little bit more serious than it might otherwise have been because, again, all of us knew that we were going to the service one way or another and had some feelings about that, had feelings about Vietnam. And I think that issue probably made the entire experience a little bit more serious than it might otherwise have been.
But your father always stressed that it was important for the students to learn about the process but also to have fun.
That's correct.
That's correct. And how do you think events like the mock convention helped prepare you for your career as an attorney?
I'm not sure it had any direct correlation to that, although clearly when you're going through that process, it's a matter of negotiations and compromises and so forth as you work your way through the various issues. So I suppose to a certain extent it would be educational to me in particular, but I don't think that was Dad's approach wasn't for a career. Dad's approach was you need to understand what's going on. You need to understand how these processes evolve and how they work so that you can, in your lifetime, at least understand what's going on and hopefully makes you a more intelligent voter.
So how do you think students can still benefit from this?
Well, again, I think it's the same thing. I think the students can learn how the process works. They'll be less naive in terms of dealing with national politics, and better prepared to be a citizen in that respect. And I think that's important. I share Dad's enthusiasm for that.
All right, well, thank you again. I'm Nicky Piszczor, and I've been talking with Westminster graduate and attorney Charles Mansell. He is the son of Thomas V. Mansell, who founded the Mock Convention in 1936 at Westminster College. We've discussed how his father started the Mock Convention and why this Westminster tradition is so important. Again, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.